My name is Mphumzi Maqungo, NUMSA National Treasurer.
You're visiting the United States to meet with ILW longshoremen, to meet with the American people. What is the story you want to tell American workers and the American people about what's going on in South Africa?
Look, firstly, I think it's important to appreciate the role that has been played by the workers of the Longshore Local 10 and the community around Auckland, Berkeley, and California in support of the South African working class struggle from the 1977, 1988, and 1986, when workers were assisting us in ending up an apartheid system. And to date, we think it's important as NUMSA to come and tell them that the struggle that have supported us, yes, we were fighting for a free, democratic South Africa, but I think things are not as rose as what they would have expected. So it is important to share the experiences, the challenges that confront us at the political level, at the trade union level, and what are the alternatives that we think as NUMSA since the last year December Congress are the solutions to the challenges that confront us.
Well, South Africa is a wealthy country, got mining, tremendous natural resources. Why hasn't that wealth transferred to the working class and the people of South Africa?
Look, I think there's only one simple answer to that, is that the current government does not have a will to take and implement the Freedom Charter, because you will notice that the Freedom Charter have said that the wealth of the country should be shared among those who live on it, but they are refusing. The second issue that becomes a problem is that the current situation, the socio-economic challenges in the country, the finance sector, the agriculture sector, the land is still owned by the tiny minority. So that is still the problem, as the agenda of NUMSA is to make sure that all of those should be transferred to the majority of the people of South Africa.
One of the developments in the Lan Min Marikana massacre was that Lan Min actually had brought in Cyril Ramaphosa as one of the owners. How did this take place that many of the union leaders of South Africa, the militant period against apartheid, ended up being stockholders and capitalists in South Africa?
Look, you will note that you've got three types of the classes. You've got the capitalist class. You've got, after 1994, there was an emerging black economic black bourgeoisie in South Africa. You've got us as the working class. So the reality is that that is what we have to live with. But that it has been formed now, it has been made legally that you've got a black bourgeoisie. So he falls into that particular strata. And as a working class, we've taken a decision that we shall not relax and allow them to continue to facilitate between the capital and the working class in order for them to survive. Ours is to make sure that we take the workers' struggle forward to themselves and to the capitalist class.
Now, you have been an auto worker. You are an auto worker and a shop steward at General Motors. What is that like in Port Elizabeth, being a shop steward for General Motors?
Look, it's not General Motors is known around the world. For us as NUMSA, the beauty is that we've got the support of our members. We interact with our members. Yes, we've got challenges. We had some number of unfair retrenchment that we are still fighting since 2010 with General Motors. It's been 4 years. General Motors continue to fight, even though that the court have ruled in our favor that the way that they've dismissed those workers in South Africa, it was unfair. But we continue to strike and to continue to strike for the better working condition. Yes, it's not an easy battle, but because of we are a united front from the factory floor, and NUMSA organized us, so we're able to win some of these battles.
So you went to Detroit, you met with auto workers at General Motors from around the world. Was there any discussion about an international strike of all GM workers worldwide, or moving in that direction?
Yes, what we're engaging on currently, firstly, we are engaging to have one common agreement, which is called International Framework Agreement. Firstly, an agreement that management of General Motors all around the world, they should respect that all trade unions, they've got the right to exist in their companies, because there are certain countries where workers are not being organized. There are certain countries where the leadership of the union is being victimized and being dismissed. There are leadership that is not being taken seriously by management. So ours, before we go for an international strike, is to make sure that General Motors appreciates that trade unions are in existence, whether you are in Russia, whether you are in Thailand, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Australia, everywhere. That is the first thing. The second issue is to develop a common program of worker solidarity. If in a particular country, General Motors is mistreating workers, General Motors undermine the trade unions legislation in various countries, how do we pledge solidarity? So we were planning those strategies and tactics of how do we intensify an worker to worker contact that will be translated to a particular program.
And in Colombia, for example, the Colombian auto workers have been injured. There's been a hunger strike. These conditions in many of these plants are very serious health and safety problems. Was that addressed at this conference, the whole situation of health and safety in these plants?
Yes, that's a very fundamental basic issue that forms that makes trade unions, is to fight for workers' rights, is to fight for health and safety. Yes, we have seen for the past few years that workers in Colombia went on a painful hunger strike, and we support those workers that, look, we've discussed that issue. That's why we met with the new management of General Motors that, look, we ought to do things differently. All of us, first, primarily, we are workers, irrespective of where General Motors is investing. Those workers, there's no way that we can allow workers to die on the point of production on the basis that they were fighting for health and safety standards. So we are dealing with those issues.
Now, Bob King, president of the UAW, has said that he believes in maintaining the profit of VW, of General Motors, that it's the job of the union to make sure that these companies are making profit. What do you think about that ideology?
Look, as NUMSA, we've been against that particular ideological stance, but the reality is that we have to be persuasive to each other. We are coming from different countries, but there are certain things that I think all of us should learn towards each other. In other countries, you will recall in Belgium, workers, they've accepted the wage cut, and in 2007, the plant was closed. To date, in Australia, we're talking about a plant of more than 250,000, including suppliers, are going to be closed. Here in the UAW, there are certain plants that accepted the wage cut, but the company continued to close. So it tells you that capital, they don't care. As long as that they can make profit, you can make sacrifices, we do make compromises during the negotiations, but we don't think that is helping the situation. Ours is to make sure that from time to time we share strategies and tactics of how we deal with that issue. Look, we have to accept that, yes, there are plans that have been closed, but what lessons as a trade union movement internationally are we can draw out of those particular experiences?
You are calling for nationalization of industry in South Africa and for socialism. You come under attack by the South African Communist Party, who said that you're failing to call for socialism or nationalization of the auto industry in South Africa. And that's a failure. You're calling for nationalization in other industries, but not mines. How do you answer that?
Now, look, we are a little bit worried about that particular stance of the South African Communist Party, because it is our view that their only mission, first and foremost, is to unite the working class, not to divide the working class. That's one thing. But look, we are saying as NUMSA, since NUMSA's inception in 1987, on the 18th of May, NUMSA adopted what we called a Freedom Charter as a minimum program. So, what we are fighting for, it's NUMSA's policy. It's a COSATU policy. So if the South African Communist Party, because that document is very clear that the land and the mines and everything else should not be nationalized, and the banks. Now, we are calling for the implementation of the Freedom Charter to its totality. If the South African Communist Party don't want to support that, it's well and good. We as NUMSA under COSATU, we've got that obligation of continue to fight for that minimum program. Yes, they have not been supporting beyond this particular resolution. There's not been part of the working class struggle. People are doing their own thing in South Africa. Working class is leading their own strike, whereas the vanguard is busy in parliament. So we understand why they will not support us, because they are busy, preoccupied with some of the very neoliberal policies in the South African cabinet and parliament in various states, all kinds of the country. So we don't worry about that. We shall continue to pursue the mandate.
The idea of workers running the wealth of South Africa, the mines, the platinum mines, the industry, is that possible without a socialist revolution?
Look, it's possible. What will happen is that, for an example, for now, we are taking a decision as NUMSA that we are for a workers' party. NUMSA, it is a socialist organization. This is not the end of our struggle, but we believe that we must do it block by block in realizing our long-term objectives as a socialist country. And we think that things are going to go to our way as long as that we can share experiences with the previous Workers' Party, what happened with the National Liberation Movement, what has happened, and so that we are not finding ourselves committing the similar mistakes that the other countries have done. And we think that there's still hope that we shall lead to a socialist South Africa.
You have come to the Bay Area and San Francisco to solidarize with the ILWU and thank them for their role in taking direct action against apartheid, the apartheid regime. We're in Mississippi. Well, before we go to that, why don't we talk about your experience in Mississippi and Tennessee and what you found about auto workers there, their organizing?
Look, everybody, almost everybody, when we see on the media and the news that people, they tend to portray the Americans as the best country in the world. We were exposed to a different world in the South. In Mississippi, I'm talking about Nissan, for an example. Workers are still battling to participate, to form a trade union. Workers, management still continue to undermine the workers' rights. So that was a very painful experience. I mean, it is enshrined in the Constitution of America that you've got the right to form a trade union. You've got the right, even employers themselves. But why, with the own current black president of this country, continue to allow that to happen? In Tennessee, you experience the same. Here where I am, I mean, we've got a painful experience. I'm coming from the Bay Area, where that area, it was in the past used to be an industrial area. It has been deindustrialized, which is a problem. There are people who are still living in shacks in this particular town, but who is leading government? Our own black people. There are workers who still not being able to enjoy their workers' rights on the basis that the management will be supported by the state. Black people are still killed. In the racism is still rife, and we don't think that, and that is an information that is not being shared with the international world. Everything will be portrayed as if things are fine. Racism, gender equality, number of people are not working, people are still, as black, we are still oppressed, So I was shocked, and I mean, it's a very informative information, how Oscar Grant was killed. Mamua Abu Jamal, he's still languishing in jail. It's proven that he was framed, but because of the role that he played in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s, he's still languishing in jail, and we still continue as NUMSA to support that. We want him to get out of that jail. He does not deserve to be there. He's supposed to be with us and leading the struggle of the working class.
Now, capitalism is dominant worldwide. Capitalism in China. General Motors has plants in China. It's billionaires. You have 27 billionaires in San Francisco. Billionaires are growing in California. Are you confident or optimistic that the working class can actually transform this situation?
Look, I'm confident as long as that the working class can organize itself as a class. Because if you don't do that, then we're going to have a problem. If we continue to interact like the way that we're interacting today and share experiences and organize itself and appreciate that in order to have a solution, it is a total takeover. We must be organized first and foremost. The unity of the working class, it is paramount. You can't have a divided working class because capitalist class is so united, and that's why they manage to penetrate, because they continue to work as a united force.